Heated shenanigans, working stiffer than mannequins. Vader time like a mannequin. Mega powers, I'm savage and peep the babbling. Got 'em shook off the verbal acumen. I'm the main event, meaning nobody coming after him. The topics we be tackling, ankle locking and tapping them. I hate seafood, but I might throw the Boston crab on them. You know sometimes it gets heated. You know sometimes it gets heated.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Heated Shenanigans Podcast. I am your host, Scott, and as you can see, joining me today is one of the most renowned men throughout professional wrestling history, WWE Hall of Famer, author, host of 83 Weeks, the one and only Mr. Eric Bischoff.
Crowd goes silent, but I'm used to it. It's all right.
Eric, how you been?
I'm blessed, man. How are you?
You know what? I can't complain. Been a bit of a rough week for me. A couple weeks ago, I lost my brother.
No, I'm so sorry to hear that.
I appreciate that. And just kind of trying to move forward and remember the good times, the good memories, everything that he provided and gave while he was still with us, and making the best out of a bad situation.
I've not been in that situation. So I can't say I understand how you feel, but hard to imagine, but thoughts are with you, brother.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Eric. Well, it's been all over professional wrestling news. It's been one of the most talked about things in professional wrestling, the Vince McMahon allegations and trafficking. Eric, I know you've talked about it on 83 Weeks. I was wondering if you could please, with my audience, share some of your thoughts on the allegations.
Oh, first off, I guess I should say this because I didn't say this on 83 Weeks when I first reacted to the news this past Monday. If the allegations are true, because we've seen instances in the past where we thought for sure allegations were true beyond anybody's doubt and found out that they weren't. And it's always a fearful thing, but I think it's also pretty hard to ignore all of the circumstances. I guess in a court of law, they would say circumstantial evidence, but there's just so much that's hard to deny or discount or set aside that it's just devastating. I think it's devastating to those who are in the wrestling industry, no matter what company you're in, because this is, WWE casts a great shadow. And sometimes that shadow can be, a wonderful thing because the business is growing, and WWE being a leader in the industry does benefit smaller companies, independent promoters. The healthier the wrestling industry is, the better it is for everybody. And unfortunately, on the flip side of that, the less healthy it is, in this case, sick, as it relates to those allegations, some of the things we read in that complaint, it negatively affects the wrestling industry and the people in it. For me personally, it's tough because I have friends in WWE. There are people that, even though I may not be friends with them, I'm acquainted with them, and I have massive amounts of respect for them and their talents and their commitment and what they've contributed and achieved. And they're all greatly affected by this. And it's hard not to put myself in their shoes and have some empathy. And then you have all the innocent people involved, not just people that are innocent, that are employees of WWE or performers in WWE, but family members and friends. And, I don't know the victim, but I'm assuming she's got a social circle. And regardless, this is just such an ugly, dark, sad situation that it's going to affect everybody for the rest of their lives, regardless of how much of it is true or untrue, or it doesn't matter anymore. It's just so dark and so disturbing that, I said this the other day on Strictly Business, the podcast I do with John Alba. I know it's almost childlike for me to say what I'm about to say, but I just wish everybody could get what they want out of this situation so that it could be resolved and people could go on with their lives, however difficult that's going to be. But that's not real. Unfortunately, the information, as we've seen in the last 24 hours, continues to drip out, and I think we're going to be seeing, unfortunately, much more of that in the weeks and months to come.
I definitely want to say, because a lot of people felt once this with Vince McMahon took place, given your history, being a fierce competitor in the Monday Night Wars, that you definitely have taken the high road on this and you've been very professional. And as somebody that's followed your career, Eric, I didn't expect anything less, but it's a true testament to your character.
Well, part of that is just having been around for a minute. I've been I've never been in a situation like this, thank goodness, but it's easy for people to get emotional, and people feel strongly about WWE one way or the other. People have strong opinions of Vince McMahon one way or the other. Well, clearly now it's probably 99% the other. But, without all of the information, if I don't see something with my own eyes, it's hard for me to believe anything 100%. But like I said, this situation is so ugly. There are so many circumstances and examples of horrific behavior that it's just hard not to acknowledge it and be fearful for what's to come. But, I've seen some of the reaction by some people who have podcasts, or in the case of Dave Meltzer, dirt sheets, and to post anonymous comments and accusations and throw people under the bus that are not even a part of this at this point is just, I think it's a reflection of insecurity on those people's parts. And I'm fairly secure in who I am and where I'm at in life, and I'm happy with where I am. So it's hard for me to just dance on somebody's grave because I have the opportunity to do it. That's not who I am.
Well, on a happier note,
boy, let's please, man. I want to make fun of Brutus the Barber Beefcake and talk about how much fun I had firing the Honky Tonk Man. I want to talk about all that silly crap.
Well, let's kind of on a more lighthearted approach here, Eric. Throughout your time in professional wrestling, what would you say is the best story you have seen told in a wrestling ring? Not necessarily a match, but the psychology of what's being told.
Well, I could go all the way back to years before I even got into the wrestling business. I think any match with Nick Bockwinkel probably would be high on my list when it comes to storytelling in the ring. I think Nick Bockwinkel, I became familiar with him when Nick was the heavyweight champion in the AWA back in the, early 70s, mid 70s, whenever it was. Whenever I moved to Minneapolis and started watching professional wrestling there. Nick Bockwinkel, early Kurt Hennig, believe it or not, and some of the great matches that Kurt Hennig, when he was really still a rookie, had with Nick Bockwinkel, still some of my favorite matches. Bret Hart is an amazing storyteller inside of the ring. It would be hard to find too many performers that have the ability to tell a story and make you believe that story, or just allow you to forget that you're watching professional wrestling and get caught up in the emotion of what's going on in the ring. And I think Bret Hart is right up there with Nick Bockwinkel. Shawn Michaels has an amazing ability to tell a great story. Currently, just about anything with Randy Orton. Randy Orton, to me, is this generation's best of the best in terms of current performers. Those are the people that I look at and really admire in terms of their in-ring storytelling ability.
One answer. Coming up for AEW, Sting is getting ready to have his final match of his incredible career. As somebody that worked closely with Sting for well over a decade in professional wrestling, Eric, how would you, if this was in WCW, how would you have wanted to send Sting out to end his career?
I mean, that's a hypothetical, and it's too hard for me to really answer hypotheticals. So suffice to say that I would, as I do right now, I hope that however Sting's final match goes, that it's everything Sting wants it to be. What I want it to be, or what the fans want it to be, what the fans want it to be is important. I know it's probably important to Sting. I haven't talked to him about it. But if Sting can walk away at the end of that match, if when the match is over, he can look out into the crowd, and at current counts, I think there'll probably be 20 some odd thousand people there. If he can look out into that crowd and be happy with himself, be satisfied with his career, more importantly, be satisfied with writing the last sentence in the last chapter of Sting's story. If Sting's happy with it, man, I'm thrilled with it. That's all that really matters to me at this point. It would be all that would matter to me if I was still running WCW today and had the opportunity to promote Sting's last match. At this point, if Sting's happy, the audience will be happy, I'd be happy, everybody wins.
Say the one thing that I think a lot of people have lost sight on is just the fact he is in this position to have this final match is what's important, because a couple years ago with that horrible injury in the ring with Seth Rollins, that was all up in the air. We thought that was the last time we would ever see Sting. And fast forward now, being able to go out on his terms. And I feel that's what's important, especially for Sting.
Yeah, we're both saying the same thing, really. And yes, on the injury, I thought for certain that was the end of it for Steve Borden, who plays the character Sting. But, Sting has overcome that, and he's in the position he's in. And, yeah, he's going to be able to go out the way he wants to go out. And not many performers get a chance to do that. Professional athletes often don't have the opportunity to do that. Their bodies give out, or they get cut or traded or whatever. And it's very rare that a performer or an athlete has the ability to achieve what Sting is going to achieve, in March, which is to go out the way he wants to go out and be in total control of that.
100%. Eric, now in your career and your experience in professional wrestling, what would you say is one lesson that you learned that you didn't expect to learn, and how did it change your career afterwards?
Well, that's a big question. What is the one thing that I learned that I didn't expect to learn? How important it is to be open-minded. I've always been a fairly aggressive person once I've made my mind up about something, or I have a vision for something, or an idea that I'm passionate about, however you want to characterize that. I tend to be fairly myopic, and I just put the blinders on and go forward as fast and aggressively as possible until I get where I want to be. And sometimes that's really good. Sometimes that's a great quality in an entrepreneur. More often it's not. And that's one thing that I've had to learn. And it's been a challenge because it goes against my nature. And I've learned how important it is to be disciplined and self-disciplined. And I work on that every day. I challenge myself often. I've been walking around today half pissed off because I didn't structure my day the way I should have. And because I didn't structure my day the way I should have, it's not gone the way I wanted it to go. I wasn't able to do the things I wanted to get done today. And that frustrates me. But I get frustrated. I go, okay, well, why did it happen? It happened because I lacked the discipline to structure my day to maximize my time. And I keep learning every single day the importance of self-discipline. And it's a constant battle amongst many others that I fight every single day.
I can attest to that. I've been victim of that myself. Now, you mentioned earlier about your lack of love for the Honky Tonk Man and Brutus the Barber Beefcake. For those who might be seeing Eric Bischoff for the first time on here and you've not checked out 83 Weeks, which shame on you, it is available anywhere you can find podcasts, so definitely check out 83 Weeks with Eric Bischoff. What is the story behind the Honky Tonk Man and the Brutus the Barber Beefcake?
Oh, man, there's no story behind it. It's really, for me, just kind of fun. I really harbor no animosity for either one of them. I would probably be challenged to find any modicum of respect for them. But just because I don't respect someone doesn't mean I have ill feelings towards them. They're just on a special list of people that I go out of my way to avoid. But, when I talk about Brutus or firing Honky Tonk Man, I do it from a sense of humor, twisted, distorted, and kind of weird as that might be. I'm just having fun.
Fair enough. Now, those two aside, was there anybody else in the run with WCW that you just, you know what, man, I really enjoyed firing that guy or girl?
No, I didn't really fire many people. There for a long while there was this narrative that I was just this horrible, oppressive, evil boss, and part of that was the character. I mean, as a character in the ring, I was like that. I fired Randy Anderson, the late Randy Anderson, God rest his soul. I fired him on national television right in front of his two little kids and his wife. But that was a scripted scene. It wasn't real, although some people thought it was. I got called up my boss's office the very next day because people that saw that on television, when Randy Anderson grew up in Rome, Georgia, and went to church there, and I fired him on a Monday night. Tuesday morning, I come into my office, and I got a message from Harvey Schiller, who at that time was president of Turner Sports and my boss, and summoned me up to his office, which he never did. He rarely ever called me up to his office. But he did, and I went upstairs. I thought, man, what is going on? I sat down. I don't know if you know who Harvey is, but he had a reputation. He was a colonel in the Air Force, and he looked like a colonel in the Air Force. Military guy, and kind of straightforward, no nonsense kind of cat. I sat down in front of his desk and he said, "So, Eric, what did you do last night?" I said, "Well, Harvey, we produced a show, Monday Night Nitro, 8 to 10, live." He goes, "I know that. But what did you do on the show?" And I'm thinking, what, does he want me to run through the entire 2-hour episode for him? Should I go get a format and show it to him? I said, "Well, Harvey, we did a lot. What specifically, what would you like to know?" He said, "Well, did you fire somebody on television?" I said, "Well, yeah. I fired a referee." "Did you think that was appropriate?" I said, "Yeah, it was pretty good. You should see it. It was great entertainment. Crowd loved it. I got a ton of heat." And, I'm talking to him like he knew what I was talking about, and he didn't. He was confused because he was convinced I actually fired Randy Anderson in front of his two little kids. They were like 5 and 7 or something like that, and his wife. And Randy had cancer. I mean, there was a lot of things going on. It was made the scene even better, by the way. But I had to explain to him that it was all contrived. It was part of a script, and that Randy was going to have his comeback, soon and all that. And I could see the relief in his eyes. He said, "Well, you better explain that to human resources, because beginning at 8 o'clock this morning, the HR department at Turner Broadcasting was getting all kinds of complaints from people that went to church with Randy in Rome, Georgia." So, even people in Turner Broadcasting thought that the character that they saw on television was really the same guy that was running the company. And, that's kind of fun to talk about now, but it was, caused problems sometimes.
Hey, and they bought it. That's the best part.
Oh, they bought it. Yeah, they bought it to the point where they were calling into Turner Broadcasting demanding that I be fired.
Well, Eric, last question before we wrap this up here. When you made the debut in WWE, it was shockwaves around professional wrestling. It was the thing we never thought we would ever see in the wild world of professional wrestling. What was the locker room's reaction to having you in WWE?
Well, if you saw it, if you watched that debut, you saw the reaction. Nobody knew. Obviously Vince clearly knew. Kevin Dunn knew. Bruce Pritchard probably knew. The lawyers involved in structuring the deal knew. Stephanie knew. Probably Shane. But that was it. It was a very, very small group of people that knew. So when I showed up, and I sat in a limo in the Continental Airlines arena for like 2 hours before the show. They wanted to make sure I got there and there were no issues. So I pulled in to the back of the venue, back of the arena, into the loading dock area, and I pulled into this limo, and the windows were all blacked out, so you couldn't see inside. I could see outside, but people couldn't see inside. So for 2 hours or whatever, well, hour and a half, 2 hours, I'm watching all this talent, trying to look in the window. They didn't realize I could see them. So I kind of felt like a monkey in a zoo, right? People put your faces up against the glass, try and see in, squint their eyes. So when the time came and I got out of that limo with Stephanie came to the limo and got me, and I started walking through it. And she took me the long way around. I think she did that on purpose. So we're walking, weaving our way through the back of the arena, and we finally get into the talent kind of a holding area. And you saw the reaction. It was real because none of them knew. And I think, a lot of them were smart enough to know that they're supposed to react, and they did. But there was a mixture of, I would say, shock, because nobody saw it coming. Nobody would have believed. At that time, nobody would have believed that Vince would have actually hired me and brought me in as a general manager. But there were some people that were genuinely upset. You could see it in their eyes. They were really, really unhappy with the idea of me being there. I'm not going to name their names now because many of them I'm friends with today, right? It doesn't really matter. That was then, this is now. But back then, I would say there was probably half a dozen or so people that were pissed off, maybe, probably concerned to a certain degree, a little insecure at the idea of me being there. But, that went away quick. That maybe lasted a week or two. And I really had fun, man. I had fun in WWE. It may have been the most fun I've ever had in the wrestling industry because I got to just be a performer. I just got to go out there and have fun doing what I was pretty good at. And to not have all the pressure that I had on me when I was running WCW and dealing with, I had over 100 wrestlers on my roster. I can't even describe to you what that was like, managing the egos and the insecurities and finding opportunities. And that was a pain. And then on top of that, I had the corporate side that I had to deal with, which was in many ways even harder and more challenging. So to have done all of that, achieve the success I achieved, watch WCW, fall from grace, so to speak, and end up where WCW ended up, that was a lot of baggage. And when I made up my mind to go to WWE, I made up my mind to leave all of that baggage behind me and do exactly what Sting is doing. When Vince McMahon called me on the phone, the very first conversation we had, and offered me the opportunity to come in, that call lasted maybe 10 minutes. I don't remember. It was short. But I remember 2 or 3 or 4 minutes into that conversation, I knew that call with Vince in that moment was my opportunity to write the final sentence in the final chapter. At least I was hoping it was my final chapter. But it was my opportunity to end my legacy, not my legacy, to end my story under my own terms. Not exactly the way I wanted to originally, but it was a great opportunity because I knew that I was good at what I did, and I knew it. And I'm not saying that in a conceited way. I just had plenty of experience and practice. I knew that I was going to be working with some really talented people that I never had an opportunity to work with previously. I knew that I was working on the largest stage in the world in terms of the business I was in. And I said, man, this is a blessing. And I'm going to be grateful for that blessing every day, and I'm going to enjoy every minute of it. And I did. There was no time during my tenure in WWE that I wasn't having a blast. It was fun. To be able to go out there and perform and not have the pressure of managing talent and dealing with corporate, it was just a blast. Very grateful for it.
Excellent stuff, Eric. We're going to go ahead and wrap this up here, guys. I want to, again, thank you again so much, Eric, for taking time from your day to be on here with me and speak and share some incredible stories and insight into professional wrestling. And, guys, if you have not checked out 83 Weeks, go over YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you enjoy podcasts. If you're a professional wrestling fan, check out 83 Weeks and Strictly Business with Eric Bischoff. It's going to be some of the most informative and entertaining podcasts that you ever intake. And again, guys, definitely check it out. Eric, is there anything that you would like to promote before we wrap it up here?
No, nothing I would like to promote. But Scott, we've never talked before, and we've traded some texts and some emails. But you're in my prayers, brother. I pray for your strength and that you heal and get through this, because I've lost people in my life, never my brother, fortunately, but prayers are with you, brother.
I appreciate that, Eric. That you have no idea how much that means coming from you.
Thanks for the opportunity to join you. If you ever need another 20 minutes, you know how to find me.
Absolutely, guys. We'll have a part 2 later down the road. Again, guys, thank you so much. And for Heated Shenanigans, I'm Scott, joined again today by Mr. Eric Bischoff, and we will see you guys on the next episode.